Hey everybody, it's Emily from Life So Savory, and today we're gonna sew a swimsuit top. My daughter, I made her this little set before our spring break trip, and she wore it and it was cute, but she said, Mom, the top is just a little too tight. So I put a little too strong of elastic here in the rib band and also a little bit too strong in the arms. So I'm going to sew a second top version that can go with these adorable flamingo bottoms, which fit perfectly. And she also said, Mom, I don't really like pink anymore. So I cut out the second version out of the flamingos instead of this coordinating pink, which I thought was an adorable combination. So we're going to make the whole outfit flamingos. And she can still wear this, but she just said it's not quite as comfortable as this one, which I made using the same pattern. It's really hard to see. A black swim top to go with another pair of bottoms that she has. And she said this one was better. So this one was cut from the exact same pattern, the same size and everything. I just went a little looser on my elastic. So instead of picking out all the elastic of this one that's too tight, it barely takes any fabric because it's so small. I just cut out another one, and today we are going to sew that live. So if you have been wondering about sewing elastic and swimwear, today we're going to answer those questions. So think of questions that you might have about sewing swim, and I'll try to answer those as we go. Again, we're just going to be sewing the top to this outfit, but you can check it out. So let me give you, I put the link in the description of this video, but I can also put the link here. So this is essentially, I'm going to be walking you through this how to sew elastic in swimwear that has a written tutorial, and you can see that link across the bottom here. So if you're interested in checking out the photo version of this, you can check that out there, and I'll just be walking through step by step. It's really easy to sew swim. It just takes some practice. So let's get into it. I'm going to show you what I have here, and then we will move over to the sewing machine to get started on at least the first step before we come back here for more pinning. So things that you need. So swimwear. I like to buy good quality swimwear. And my two go-to places for swimwear are Raspberry Creek Fabrics and knitfabric.com. I don't remember exactly. I bought swim from a couple different places this spring. So honestly, I don't remember where the flamingos came from, but it is one of those two places. And the swimwear is great quality, and it just holds up really well to chlorine and beaches and all those things. So anyway, if you can't finish this live, as I see Debbie's commenting, just go ahead and you can share this to your page, or you can come back and watch it when you're done. It will be here for you to rewatch as soon as I'm finished. So I'm glad those of you are here. Say hi, let me know if you have sewn swimwear, if you're interested in it, if it's something you're looking forward to this summer. So I am hoping to sew a suit for myself before swim comes, but I'm gonna wait another month because I don't need it right now. So I'm just focusing on my daughters, and we'll go from there. So where was it? Okay, so swimwear. So I get good quality fabric. Now here's what I don't really do. I don't use swim elastic. I just sew with regular braided elastic from Amazon. Okay, so that's all. I get regular 1/4 inch elastic. And honestly, for the rib one, I have 1/2 inch elastic here, okay? And that's it. I don't use swim elastic. Things have held up. I haven't had any trouble with my suits breaking down. If they do, they have other problems before the elastic gives out. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who disagree with me, but I'm just telling you what I use. Thread, I use whatever thread's in my sewing machine. I don't change it up. Totally normal thread. I will probably put a knit needle or a stretch needle on my sewing machine. But other than that, I'm just using regular thread, regular elastic, and I haven't had any trouble. Even when my kids were doing swim team and they were in the water every day, all summer long, the suits held up just fine. And I'm sure most people aren't even swimming that much unless you have a pool in your backyard. So no problem. I would much rather splurge on the swimwear and getting good quality fabric than I would on that. Also, lining from either of those two places. You can buy swim lining, and you can see this suit is fully lined. Okay, and that just gives extra reinforcement, as well as if your fabric is at all see-through, it just adds that layer. Okay, so those are the supplies that you need. You need swimwear or swim fabric, lining, and elastic. That's it. Okay, and the elastic, I just use whatever's in my stash, or I just buy it off Amazon. So not anything special. Okay, the pattern that I'm using here is my girls basic swimwear pattern, and the link to that is in this how to sew swimwear link below. So if you want to check that out, you can. It's a one-piece basic scoop back swimsuit with good bum coverage, which is always important for me, and good coverage on the top too. It's plenty high here and not super scooped under the arms. And it has so many variations and hacks, and this two-piece suit is a hack of the one piece, where I literally just cut it in half, and I'm doing that. So that's what we're doing today. We have there. So I'm freezing. Oh no. I don't know if my internet's bad. It doesn't look bad on this end. So sorry if it's glitching out. Hopefully it's not too bad. And you can get the gist of it as we go. So, all right. So we're going to head over to the sewing machine. We are going to sew. Oh, I probably should have put the camera at the serger. I'll move it over. We're going to sew I'll pin this together while we're here. All right. So let me, if anyone else is noticing it's freezing, let me know. That's not fun. Hopefully it's not everybody, but it totally could be. Okay. So I have the back, which is a lower scoop than the front. And I have the front. If you do edit the pattern to make it a two-piece, just make sure your side seams are equal. So I'm going to go over, and with both the suit and the lining, I'm going to sew the shoulders. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 clips there. Oh, good. Okay. Hopefully we can get through this. I don't know. And then we're going to sew the side seams. And because I cut this is supposed to be a one-piece suit, so I've cut it shorter. Obviously, just make sure your side seams are the same, however long you want to make it. You can have a longer top or a shorter top. Okay, so we're going to sew the side seams and the top on the main fabric, and then we're going to do the same on the lining. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together as well. Lining fabric you can buy in a couple of different, I don't want to say strengths, but this is just a mesh. And then I also have a power mesh that I would use probably more on my suit that actually is a little bit of compression as well. So, okay, so those of you just coming in, hopefully we're not having internet trouble, but I just want to say today we're sewing swimwear, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to sew a little swim top. My daughter needed a redo. We're creating a top that will go with these matching bottoms. So cute, okay? So it'll look like this, but it'll be flamingo. And I'm replacing this pink top that is she said it was too tight. So a little too tight in the arms and a little too tight around the bottom. All right, we're gonna sew this first part on the serger. So actually I put the camera on the sewing machine, but let me move it over to the serger here. And I have my airflow is what I'm using. So I'm super excited about that. And if you guys have any questions on that, you can ask too. I've loved using it. It has sewed like a dream on everything that I have sewed it on so far. Okay, so let's see if we can sew the swimwear on here. Okay, so like I said, we're going to sew just the top and the side seams on both the suit and the lining. Okay, so I'm just going to go across the top. A 3/8 inch seam allowance is included. Okay, so we're just sewing across there. You can use a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine if you don't have a serger. You absolutely do not have to have one to sew swimwear. And in fact, the rest of this project I will do on my sewing machine. You can sew the elastic on with your serger, but I feel like I've done that less and less over the years, and I do really like the control that my sewing machine gives me, and I'll show you what my favorite settings are as we sew the elastic on the sewing machine. But I do like to sew these main seams with the serger. It's just so easy, and then it gives a nice stretchy seam. But if you don't have a serger, just go ahead and use your sewing machine and use a zigzag or a stretch stitch to sew what I've just sewed. Okay, so here is the main part of it, okay? Yes, Arnell, so this is the same machine that Angela just showed, and I did an unboxing on it last week, and I've been using it ever since, and so far it has been fabulous. Debbie, I have adjusted my differential feed just slightly, so let me see if I can show you. So the one is where it normally is, and for knit fabrics, I'm doing it just slightly above the one because I was getting a little bit of waving in the differential feed, so without changing that. But just slightly, not even a whole number, not even a half number, literally just a slight adjustment. Okay, so sewing the shoulders. Oops, sorry, my hand gets right in front of there. Probably would be better if I had the camera over on this angle, but we're gonna move it over here to the sewing machine in just a minute. So you can deal with my hand. So you're just creating two of the same thing, one of lining, one of regular swim fabric. Both need to be sewn with a stretch stitch or a zigzag so that they have good movement and flow. And this suit is a size 6 for my daughter, who is, or maybe I did a size 7. She's 9, but tall and thin. So if I was making the one piece, I usually lengthen the size 6 length or size 6 width to the size 8 length, and that is do that. Yes, Kathy, I'm using regular thread. So that's, I said that at the very beginning, and I'll say it again. I do buy good quality actual swim fabric. I guess I've used athletic fabric before. But what I don't do is use any special thread or elastic for my swim. And I haven't had any trouble with it breaking down, or at least breaking down before anything else. You know, sometimes the whole suit breaks down if you're using it too much, but I have not had any trouble with that. So regular thread, regular elastic. So I'm going to use 1/4 inch elastic around the neck and the arms, and then I'm going to use 1/2 inch elastic around the rib cage for the bottom band of this. So what I like to do now before I put the elastic on is I'm cutting all these serger tails, and this is going to be folded over and sewn into 2 more seams. So I'm not really worried about this fraying, but normally I would never say chop all your serger tails so close. We want to weave those in or wait till they sewn, but I do find that they really get in the way when I'm sewing the elastic. So I'm going to chop all those pretty close to the seam so that I can work on putting this together without that in the way. All right, so let's turn the front right side out. So cute, right? The flamingos are so cute. And we're gonna place the, actually maybe I should put that back inside out because I really want to be working on the wrong side. Okay, we're gonna, you got a cute look at it, but I'm gonna put it wrong side out again. So we're gonna put the wrong sides of the lining together with the wrong sides of the main, and then you don't have any seams exposed. They're all inside the lining. So I'm going to turn this out, and essentially I'm going to pin, you can pin or clip these together so that you're using them as one piece of fabric rather than 2. And if you want to go ahead and baste them together, you can, but I would definitely still use a stretch stitch for basting. I saw someone recently who was having trouble getting the elastic to stretch, and it appeared that they had basted the swim and the lining together using a straight stitch. Well, if I base that together using a straight stitch, there's no way I'm gonna be able to stretch and pull the elastic like I need to. So any sewing that you're doing on this entire project needs to be using a stretch or a zigzag. And I love a zigzag for the next part of this, putting the elastic on. Okay, so I just clip the shoulder seams in a couple of places, okay, on either side. And now, kind of shake it out and get it to lay. And then I'm going to add a few clips around the neckline and around the arms as well. Okay, so again, I'm lining up the edges because I want to use these and sew these two pieces of fabric as if they were one piece of fabric. Okay, so it's just a little bit tedious working your way around, but this prep work will really help later on. And we're going to use a lot more clips / pins when we get to the elastic portion, but I'm just getting ready for that now. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about the bottom yet because we're going to sew that last. What we're going to sew now is the neckline and the armholes, and first thing we're going to do is measure both of those. So I like to measure both of those before I put in any elastic, because once you put in either one of those elastics, it does start to scrunch up the suit a little bit and make it more difficult to measure any of it. So before you get sewing, let's measure both of the arm and the neck. And I like to use 80 to 90% of that measurement to cut the elastic. I think I use closer to 80 on this pink one. Again, my daughter says it's too tight and scrunched up. So we are on this one, I made it closer to the 90% and it just had to barely stretch the elastic and it fits much better. It's impossible to see in front of my blue sweater here, this cute top. So we'll be able to see the flamingos a little bit better. All right, so let's measure the armhole. You're gonna cut 2 of those once you do measure it. So I like to start at one of the seams, start at the top shoulder seam, and you're just gonna measure around this opening. All the way around, and it is 13.5 inches. So that means we will subtract about 1.3 inches. So 13.5, we will cut it just over between 12, I usually just have paper, between 12 and 12.5 inches. And we're going to cut 2 of those because we have 2 arms. Okay, so I'm going to go just slightly on the longer side again, because my daughter said this was a little bit tight. So we're going to go 12.5 inches. We'll need a little bit of overlap to sew this into a circle. So let's cut 2 12.5 inch pieces. Okay, then we're going to measure the neck opening and do the same thing again. Okay, so I start on one shoulder and just measure around. This one is a little bit longer, obviously, because it's all around the back, which is kind of a scoop, and the front, back up and around. Okay, so it is 27.5 inches. So we would subtract 2.7. So 27, my brain's gonna hurt. 27 minus 2 is 25, and then the 0.7 would make it 24.5. But I'm just gonna cut it just around that 25 inch mark. So again, it's a little bit on the longer side to hopefully not be too tight, okay? Wow, my brain. Okay, so 25 inches around. And if I find that this seems too big, you can always make your elastic smaller. Always, always, but you can't really make it bigger without cutting a new piece. Okay, so now I have 3 pieces of elastic. I have the 2 arm pieces and I have the neck piece. I'm gonna go sew these in a circle over on my sewing machine, and then we'll come back and pin or clip them into place on here. So let me zip this over and hopefully this will work out here. And I realized, well, maybe I was going to leave this blue on there. See what I have. I might need to wind a new bobbin. Maybe I have a blue bobbin. Okay, so let's turn this on. And I'm just going to use a regular zigzag stitch for this one to stitch these into a circle. So take your elastic, overlap it just slightly. Make sure that it's not twisted. And then you're just going to go ahead and stitch back and forth. I do have a stretch needle on my sewing machine. So hopefully that works for the elastic and for the swimwear. And then you can see it's in a circle right like that. Okay, so that's one. We're going to repeat that 2 more times. Take the arm opening, overlap it. We're going to stitch it into place. Okay, so we have that one. And let's do one more. Okay, trying not to twist these, doesn't matter which side is on the top or bottom. I just like to put it right under the needle. I did not change any of the zigzag settings. We're just using whatever the standard presets are on the zigzag. And now we have 3 loops that we can go ahead and put these into our swimsuit. So let's go ahead and pop back over. So this is a little bit of prep work. And then once we get sewing, it really does go pretty lickety split. But we can just do it. All right, now, you know I love clips. I love clips and use them 99% of the time. But I have found that when I'm doing the swimwear, and if I do clips, especially if I have to pull the elastic quite a bit, the elastic can slide through the clips more than the pins. So I will tell you, this is probably one of the few times, in not counting sewing with vinyl or something thick, that I can't, or zippers, I will be using pins, especially for the arms and the neck, maybe not around the bottom because that's more of a simple installation. So pins or clips, whatever works best for you. This is a case where I do like to use pins because it doesn't slide. Okay, it is a little tricky because it is so thin, but it's what it is. All right, so I'm going to first quarter my elastic. That means divide it into 4 quarters. So 1 is the zigzag. Opposite of that is 2. Then you line those up in the middle, and then you can go ahead and mark the alternate sides. Okay, and so then the elastic is into quarters. Then you're going to do the same thing on your arm. Now the front and back of the armhole may not be the same. So that means these 2 clips that I put on the shoulder seam and the underarm seam might not already be perfect halves. So I just usually slide one of these over until those are the top and bottom quarters. And then you can pull it open, align those in the middle, and then go ahead and mark the 2 sides of that. And then those are the other quarters. So now we have quarter marking on the elastic and quarter marking on the armhole to put the elastic into place. Okay, so we want to put the elastic on the lining side of this. I might keep that clip, we'll see. So far I don't have to stretch it. So I have both the lining and the main fabric, and I'm putting the elastic right on the edge of it. I'll show you this up close after I get this pinned in place. So I'm just matching up those quarter markings. Okay, and then moving my way around the suit. And again, I'm pinning or clipping the fabric as 1 layer, even though it's 2 layers. We're just going to treat it as 1. Okay, so the elastic is positioned around, again, I'm working on the inside of the suit, positioned around that armhole. Let's do the same on the other armhole and go from there. All right, so I want this to be, just gonna slide this over slightly. so that these are even. Then I'm going to open this up, put those in the middle, mark the outsides. Anyone else sewing fun swimwear for summer? It was getting really nice here, and then yesterday it snowed, but it's supposed to be 80 next week. So I am full on preparing for summer, even if the weather can't make up its mind what it wants to do here in Colorado. We'll probably still have more snow, which I'm sure we'll have more snow. It's usually the weekend after I plant my garden, but I'm going to move forward with summer mode. I didn't mention, so the zigzag where you sew it together, I usually place that either on the top shoulder or the underarm shoulder, just as a place to put it. But you can put it anywhere you want. So that's what I usually do with it. I usually do line it up on one of those seams. All right. So I'm going to work my way around this in the same way. It's a lot of repetition here. Oh, Kathy, yay! That is so fun. So I took my other brother serger, what did I have, the 3734, in to be serviced as soon as I got the airflow. It needed to be serviced. It had like a few little quirks going on with it, and I haven't had it serviced for forever. But I knew I was getting this other one, so I wanted to wait until that one was in the way. So Kathy, you're gonna love it. I refinished a prom dress this weekend for a friend, and it did a beautiful rolled hem. So far I have loved everything about it and haven't had any things or issues where I'm like, oh, my other serger did this better. Because you know, with machines, like there's always pros and cons, and you get used to one machine. But so far, so good. Haven't had any of those issues. Okay, so look at the arms are pinned in, okay? And again, because I'm using that 90% measurement, it is not nearly as stretched as sometimes it might be. Now, quartering the neckline, I find tricky because yes, I can mark the center of the front and I can mark the center of the back easy, but the shoulder seams are not halfway. So sometimes I just mark the front and the back, and then I sort of do a stretcheroo to find the middle, which I think I might do. So let's find, here's the zigzag. Here's the opposite of the zigzag. I'm going to put that zigzag in the back center, and then in the front center, I'm going to put the other marking. I'm going to pin it so I can give it a nice stretch to find the other center. And if I wasn't like switching cameras back and forth and doing this for you, I probably would do one arm pin, go sew, do the other arm pin, come back and sew. So anyway, there you go. Yes. Well, even the 1034, Kathy, to service it is probably worth it more than it's worth. I was shocked when I took mine in what they quoted me to serge it or to do it. And this is a guy that I thought was pretty affordable before, but he's raised his prices. So servicing machines is definitely not fun. Okay, so I have the front and back marked. And what I'm trying to do is find the middle placement to pin in the middle here on this neckline. So I'm just going to stretch and then sort of work my way into the center and see if I can find an approximation. If I don't like exactly how it's sewn, then I'll take it out and do it again. But I think that seems pretty good. So that's just something I do on the neckline. If it's a big neckline, some suits have a much smaller neckline. This one has a scoop back, so it is really uneven on the sides to sort of find those extra quarters. So I'm also, like I said, I'm using that 90% measurement, so I'm not stretching this a ton. So we'll see. Okay, so here we go. We have the arms, we have the neck pinned in multiple places, and let me show you how I stretch and sew this into the swimsuit. It is quick and easy, and you're just going to love the results. So let me switch over here to the sewing machine and we'll take a look. Okay, so, sorry, get myself organized. I like to sew this elastic on with a regular zigzag. Now, let's note, you can sew this section or this step with the serger pretty easily. You just would sew right along the edge, making sure the knife does not cut the elastic, that it just trims the fabric. Quick and easy, and does give a nice finish. I used to do that all the time. I don't know. I've kind of come to love just doing it on the sewing machine. I find it a little simpler, but a lot of people do it on the serger, and actually it works great and looks beautiful. So up to you. We're going to start at the underarm seam, and I'm going to stretch and sew the elastic. This is a little bit of a two-hand job to stretch and sew. So let me see if I can move this and give you a better view. Maybe I can put this right in front of me. Let's see. All right, so let's see if I can coordinate, sewing and doing this, but I really want you to see how I'm stretching and sewing this. So a little back stitch to make sure it's really into place. Remove that first pin, and then I want to stretch from here to the next pin so that this is nice and flat so I can sew along there. I want to make sure I'm catching both the swim fabric and the lining in that, and keeping the elastic pretty much on the edge of that fabric. I don't really want to sew too far into the fabric. Okay, so you can see I have this hand in the back. It is pulling just slightly. The one in the front is sort of just guiding it through, and I'm just keeping it all lined up as I go around. When you get to the next pin marking, again, this is why it would be easier to do one step at a time, because I wouldn't have this elastic in my way. Remove the next pin. Make sure your needle is set when you're doing this so that if you're pulling, it doesn't move the fabric. Okay, so I've got my layers all lined up here, pulling so that it's nice and straight. We don't want any rumples stitched into the fabric, and going to that next pin or clip. So once I've got there, I'm going to go just a little bit farther before I set the needle, and then reset the next section of the suit. These are all curved lines, which is why I just go a little bit and then reset it, because it is curving around the suit. So I want to make sure that I'm staying on the edge and getting all of that. All right, where to sew on the elastic? Do you sew on the inside? Do you sew on the outside? For this portion, I just kind of sew down the middle, and I don't worry about necessarily exactly where I'm sewing, because we're going to fold this over, and this will not be seen on the outside. For the next step, I am a little bit more particular where I sew, and I'll show you that when I get to it. Okay, so here is the inside. I will just trim that off a little bit. Here is what is on the right side of the fabric. It's a nice stretchy stitch on both sides. And then what we will do is just fold this over to enclose the elastic and stitch along there one more time to finish it. But let's do all of the first step, which is to sew this elastic into place before we move on to the next step. So I'm starting on the underarm seam, and you can see how these serger tails are here, but that's why I like to clip them all short so that that thread is not in my way. All right, so a couple stitches to set the stitching, and then I'm going to line it all up. So the first section, I like to have just a hair of fabric sticking out on this side so that I know the elastic isn't going to be sticking out past the fabric. But not too much or your suit's not going to fit right, because the allowance is really just the width of the elastic, not too much past that. A little bit of a bump over that elastic, stretching and sewing. You can see again, I'm using my back hand to pull it through. Hopefully this is streaming okay using this camera. Okay, so lining up and sewing, just stretch just enough so that the fabric doesn't have any puckers. You don't really need to like stretch it as far as the elastic can go. We just need to stretch it so that the fabric is laying flat. All right, so one last part to sew. That's the neckline. And I didn't put quite as frequent of pins or clips in this one, so I might have to stop and line up a little bit more often. But we'll get started and go from there. All right. Line it up, pull and stretch. Take that out. That was just holding the two layers of fabric together. It didn't have the elastic in it. Okay, so there's my next marking. And then this clip is just holding the two layers of fabric together, so I can take that out. Okay, we're coming around to the front. I think it's the front of the suit. Making sure it's all, I feel like the elastic just wants to slide. So that's why I just stop a lot, sort of fight with it, battle it out, and then keep going. And again, curved edge, so lots of times to stop and adjust. Keep going around, remove the clips. Okay, we're at the other shoulder seam. Almost around to the back. It doesn't really matter how tight or loose your elastic is, although I guess how loose is, you don't want a floppy. You want this to have some nice structure as it goes around. But what really matters is that it's even around, because I have done before where like the back is really tight and gathered and then the front is really not. And I do notice those things. So whatever you're doing, just make sure it's sort of even. Okay. Whew. Now, we have the elastic in the swimsuit on the arms and the front. So let me show you now my favorite stitch for the top stitching, and that is either one of 13 or 14 with the double or the triple zigzag, and it just stitch, 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 stitch. Each part of the zigzag has 2 or 3 stitches in it, and I think it's such a cute way to top stitch the swimwear. So that is what I'm going to use, and I love the way that it looks. So this one, you can clip it over, you can pin it over, you can trim this extra lining first, but you can also just fold and sew. I like to sew on the right side of the fabric so that I can really see what I'm doing for this. And I will, like, all these threads will need to be clipped. So you could do that now, or you can really do that after we sew, okay? But you're going to fold it over just the amount of the elastic, not more, not less, but the elastic should be fully enclosed and fully folded over. And then when you stitch, you want to stitch on the inside edge of the elastic, not in the middle, not on the outside edge, but the inside edge, so that really the stitching is right on this raw edge. And that will help the elastic from flipping up or open when you're wearing this. Okay, so I don't really pin or clip. I just get in there, stretch and sew. And you can see how I'm sewing really on the inside edge because I have it set a little bit over and I'm not on the outside. So I'm not going to start with a back stitch because we will overlap and do that when we come back around. But again, I'm using both hands to stretch this out so that the fabric lays flat and straight. And I'm just going a few inches at a time. And then I'm going to reset how it looks. And sewing on the outer or the inner edge. I don't know, is it outer or the inner edge? What would you call it? of the elastic going over the shoulder seam, a little bit of a bump. Make sure that fabric is laying nice and flat so that you're not just stitching any weird bumps into it. Okay, and then when you're back around, I'm going to top stitch over the first stitch as well, so that secures both edges. Cut this. Okay, so now you can see how cute the stitching is. You can see that triple or double stitch on the zigzag, and then you can see here how that stitching is right on the edge where this fold was. So that inner stitching, that's where I stitched the elastic on, and then the second stitching is where we just sewed, and this will really keep everything laying down nice and flat and secure. And on the inside, yeah, you can see both stitches. I probably could have used a better color, but on the outside, you just see that single layer of stitches. It's super stretchy, super cute, and easy to sew. Okay, so inner edge. I see there's one vote for saying inner edge. So I think that's what I would call it, because I think the outer would be where the fold is. All right, so let's do the other arm. And sewing on that inner edge of the elastic. Obviously, you want to make sure that you do catch part of the elastic in this stitching to hold it all together, but I don't need to be right down the middle of it. In fact, I think it's better if you're not. So I think I used to sew more right down the middle, and then every once in a while I'd have like an edge or one part that would just flip up or under and not really be cute. So that problem was fixed when I started sewing a little bit farther over into the suit on the elastic. And these bumps, the seams, they are a little bit bulky, but you can definitely get over them. That's why I use both my hands to go help it over. Okay, lots of threads to clip, always, always. Okay, cute, looks great. I have like a variegated thread on my machine right now, so it's kind of fun. Okay, the neckline. The arms look good. So you want them to be really structured and not floppy, but I can tell this is still going to need to stretch out just slightly, but it's not nearly as gathered as that pink one that my daughter said was too tight. This is going to fit way better. All right, so let's flip this under. I usually start to sew in the back of the suit so I don't have any weird start lines on the front. Again, oh, not threaded. This is the girls' basic swimsuit, which is a one-piece suit, but you can absolutely, where'd the thread go? Okay, I gotta start, rethread it. You can absolutely chop it into two, and I often do that, but it's also an adorable one-piece suit. And just recently, I shared a tutorial for putting a tie back on the one-piece suit, which was so cute too. So this is a very basic swimsuit, but so easy to hack and add fun details for, and I do that quite a bit and dress it up. So for the great price of $5.50, you can get a basic suit, and then if you're a little bit adventurous in your sewing, you can really have unlimited options for adding a skirt, adding a tie back, cutting it into two pieces. But I specifically made this suit with great coverage in both the butt area. Ooh, see how that's, I want to make sure I'm stretching that. The butt area and the front area around the arms. It's not too scoopy, and around the neckline. It's lower in the back, but it is not low at all in the front, and I love it. So it would make a good swim team suit, makes a good play suit. And it's easy to sew. And it's a great price. So anyway, that's what I'm using for the base of this suit. And I use for many of my daughter's suits. Okie doke. We are finished with the arms and the back. So cute. It lays so nicely. It's always a little tricky here where you have the folded over layers meeting, but once you get past it, it's never a problem. I just think it's always a little tricky to sew that under there, but it looks great. All right, let's head back and talk through finishing this suit. Oops. Okay, so the final step would be to add the elastic around the bottom of this suit, but I'm gonna actually wait and measure around my daughter because her complaint with this one was that it was too tight and I can't breathe around my ribs. So I just wanna, even though this one is okay, I just thought I'm just gonna measure around so it feels really good on her. But again, normally I would use the same 90% on here because you are stretching it to sew. You are stretching a little bit to add that zigzag, which does expand the elastic a little bit. But how cute did this turn out? And okay, so it is a little sort of finicky, shall we say, to pin and sew, but it turns out just great and looks adorable. And honestly, if you look at swimsuits you bought in the store, they have been sewed almost exactly the same where the elastic has been sewed on, probably more with a serger, but this is I don't mind this inside finish at all. It's smooth, it's not bumpy. I think it looks great, and you can just do it on your regular sewing machine. So how easy is that? All right, so there's the top with a higher neck. There's the back with the scoop, and then it's going to match these cute swim bottoms. How adorable. So you could cut this quite a bit longer, make it a tankini. This one will be just upper rib cage. I was going for the same as this one, which turned out really cute, and she wore a lot and looks great. So I'll probably, yeah, it'll be about right once I fold it under. So there you go. I'm gonna wait and do, like I said, the bottom edge till I can measure on my daughter, but I hope this was informative and really showed you how to stretch and sew elastic on swimwear. One more time, I do not use special thread. I do not use swim elastic. People are probably rolling over in their graves when I say that, but I have not had elastic give out, even just using Amazon elastic. And I think the links are in the links to the elastic I use are in the description in that post on swim elastic. I know this pattern definitely is if you're interested in it, but I don't have suits give out. I think the more thing is if the threads are popping, but if you've really stretched while you're sewing, then your threads aren't gonna pop. And just make sure you've used a nice, look at how stretchy it is, okay? So quick and easy. So no special supplies except for just good quality swim fabric. And after that, I just sew. So anyway, thank you for joining me. This was cute and easy, something that we needed. And I love when I can combine that with a live show. So I'll be back next week. Not sure what I'm gonna sew yet. Plenty of spring, summer things to be sewn. But this is what I was sewing this week. So thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Have a great week. Bye.